posted on my channel on Substack, and we are going to talk about a topic that I'm sure everyone can relate to because we're covering everything: AI, technology, social media, kids, parents. I mean, who can't relate to any one of those five things? Although the goal is to talk about all five of those things. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks everyone for coming in. I see people are popping in now to see what this conversation is about. I welcome all your comments. I welcome all your questions. You want to engage, by all means, ask questions, have a conversation, talk to us. We can answer whatever we want. But I think the reason why we're coming up with this topic is because it's a very common topic that a lot of us are struggling with. I'll admit I'm a parent of teens, and also as a social media expert and a digital marketing guy, you'd think that I would have my kids firmly on all that stuff. But no, because I know of all the dangers and what I've seen over the last 10, 15 years of work with this stuff, I want to be really careful about, what's good for the kids, what's not, and how to find that right balance. So we'll start off by doing introductions. So I'll start with, well, why don't you introduce yourself first and then I'll go.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I see Florence is here. Hi, it's good to see you, Florence. My name is Kimberly Lechnick, and I am a relationship coach for executive women in midlife. And I have many years experience working with children, and that when Bobby had extended this invitation, I couldn't help but raise my hand and join because it's definitely a conversation that we need to have. Again, thank you so much for the invitation, Bobby.
Okay, great. And myself, my name is Bobby Umar. I am a motivational speaker by trade. Over the last 25 years, I've done 1,000 keynotes workshops across 4 continents. I initially started talking about soft skill leadership skills, but then I taught like networking and things like that. But then I became known as a personal branding guy. Then I started being known as a digital marketing guy, having built up large followings on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. And then I started talking about thought leadership, digital presence, authority, vulnerable storytelling, and ultimately, what I do here on Substack, as well as with my TLB club, is I help people level up their brand, monetize their digital strategy a little bit better than they normally are, and help small business owners not feel alone. So they feel like they have a place to ask questions, get resources, get support with weekly coaching and things like that. And now I'm happy to announce that I'm going to be doing a weekly live stream on Substack. My plan is actually to do a weekly live stream on Substack and then a monthly one that's multi-stream. It's going to be streamed across LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, all platforms once a month. But this is my first one that I'm doing weekly here. Hopefully, I'll do more of them. And anyone who's listening in, by all means, come by, ask questions. That's kind of really what it's all about. Because I'm a parent of teens, and because I'm also a social media advocate, and because I'm also heavily using AI and teaching other small business owners how to use it properly, I'm seeing all the benefits. I saw the benefits of social media back in the day, particularly for amplification of your voice and brand, but I also have seen the downside. And similar with technology and with AI, I see the benefits, but I'm also seeing the downside. So what I'm trying to do is have a conversation to talk about it and kind of see where we're at and how things are going. So I thought what I'd start with is maybe I'd talk a bit about the history of how we've taken this on. So I'll go to you, Kimberly, first. Tell us a bit about your history with, I guess, the advent of social media and now the advent of AI, and how have you kind of navigated, and what do you currently do or use?
Well, are you talking about me personally? Or are you talking about
Yeah, you
family?
personally. Oh, you
Just
personally.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I love tech as a tool. I absolutely love it. I'm an advocate for it, but I also know that I like to use it responsibly. And I think that's kind of my interest in it because, right? It's like this pen, we use the pen, it's a tool, but we can't really say how someone is necessarily going to use it and if they're going to use it effectively. So I like to use social media again to communicate to brand the business as you help many entrepreneurs do. And yeah, I use chat, I use Claude, I actually even dipped my toe in this thing called nano banana or something, I don't know, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me, and I love what we have in terms of access to the tools. So I'm a huge advocate for it. But again, I think it comes with great responsibility.
Yeah, and I'll say that I think for me, my experience has been that when I first saw social media, I saw the potential right away. I was like, "This is really big," and so what happened was I invested in social media. I decided, okay, Facebook first came, actually LinkedIn first came, and I went to that. Then Facebook came. I saw how great Facebook could be, so I started investing in that and inviting all my friends. And then pretty soon, the next thing I know, I was like, this Twitter's kind of interesting too. It's different, and I saw LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter as three different ways in which to do it, and I just started putting stuff out there. And next thing you know, the one that took off first for me was Twitter. People started engaging me
Mhm.
more, and that thing started getting like I remember I got 5,000 followers after about 5 months of being on there, and then the thing that really got me was somebody hired me to do a speaking gig for their company or their organization just from my tweets. I was like, "Wow, that is a big deal." They just like my stuff. I'm like, "This is great. Let me invest some more." So I invested more energy into it, and that's kinda how I started building. Twitter built up to 100,000 pretty quickly, and then I started building up into other platforms as well. LinkedIn was the next one, and then pretty soon Twitter became a 500,000 followers, LinkedIn, I became a top voice. Then I started building Instagram. And then I joined other ones as they came along, Clubhouse, I joined. Other ones I started TikTok, I looked at that. So for me, trying to figure that out, I saw the potential. Now, the downside of social media was, there was a lot of hate and vitriol and bots and divisiveness and things like that. And learning how to navigate that, especially on Twitter, was very difficult in the beginning, but then I got used to it. And now, there are trolls on all platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it. But it's something that I learned to navigate. Now, AI came along, and my initial interpretation of it was that um, typically what I do is, when I have three people I know in my network that I know, like, trust, and admire, and I think are super super smart, I'll invest in what they suggest. And so when AI first came along, I have a large network, so three people came in pretty early saying you should try this. So I did, and I decided at the time, about 2.5 years ago, to invest in about a dozen AI type tools. I got those grandfathered in deals, all that type of stuff. And then after about a year and a half, I saw that some had really built and developed and others had not. So then I basically canceled more than half of them. And now then I had about 4 or 5 that I would pay for and use. Now I think that in the last year, ChatGPT and Claude and other platforms have made me realize that I can use these ones and I don't even need those other platforms anymore as much because they were taking advantage of the fact that I didn't know or how to use AI, but now I kind of do. So maybe I don't need those anymore too. So it's been really interesting journey. But now also at the same time, what's the issue? Well, the issue is like there's so much AI slop now. It's hard to differentiate between what's good and what's bad. There's people who are not learning critical thinking, not learning how to do things on their own. They're relying too much on it. They don't see the bias of AI tools. There's so many different problems that people are having. And then that also becomes parenting too, because I see the kids using AI and, they want to borrow my ChatGPT account for their stuff. I'm like, I don't mind. I just want to know, like, what are you doing with it? Like it can't do your assignment for you. You have to think for yourself. So now that I'm fully versed in social media, having done it for 15 years, I know it quite well enough to know where to navigate and manage things, which is why, I haven't given my kids access to too many tools. I don't give them smartphones. My daughter has in grade 10, she's a flip phone, and my son got his smartphone in grade 12. And that was on purpose because the data was really terrible for what it did to so many things about you. And that was just for adults. And I was like, man, I have a harder time with it. So I made those hard choices with AI, same thing. Now, like, where do I spend my time and what's the impact? And that's what I want to talk about today. So that's been my history. So if you're listening to this live stream, we're talking about AI, technology, social media, and its impact on kids and parents. And so, we're happy to take your questions. Let's see, Lachelle is there. Hey, good afternoon to you. Good to see you. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat. I'll let people know what you're saying, or if you have a question, we can talk about it. But really, it's about just going through the issues and challenges. So with that, I mean, back to you, Kimberly. I mean, uh, there's probably numerous challenges, but let's go through them
Yeah.
one at. So why don't you pick one? Let's talk it through. What do you see as a challenge for you, as you see it, with in terms of for yourself, but also for kids, parents, clients? Like, what will be a challenge you want to talk about?
Well, I think um, a big one that we need to have conversations about, not just one conversation, we need to have many conversations about is this idea of connection. For me as an adult with a fully functioning brain, I knew that when I got onto social media and I started meeting, like you were mentioning some of the platforms, right? I mean, meeting great people, I met Florence, I met Lachelle, and those are just a couple, right? But I had a fully intact brain. My prefrontal cortex was fully formed, right? So I had the discernment and I had all of that. What we're seeing though with our younger generations is that they don't necessarily have that discernment or that fully functioning brain, that prefrontal cortex. So my concern, and I'd be interested in hearing what others. Yeah, Lachelle says connection is so very important. What I'm interested in finding out, Bobby, through this discussion is finding out like we're more connected than disconnect, but are we really connected? Right? I think
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of where I think a good starting point would be, because I think connection, learning how to build relationships and the foundation of them is so important, and we can, as parents, advocate that, right, to a device of any kind. So, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, a couple years ago, I think it was during the pandemic. Actually, I was working on my latest keynote, and I was going to talk about the new connection, which was how things have changed with the advent of social media. And so, what's interesting is that you know, um, social media and technology has allowed us to expand our connection and broaden and amplify the reach of people. Like I have friends now all over the world that I haven't even met in person yet because of the reach and how I've been able to do that, right? So, but at the same time, there's so many things we're connected to digitally.
Yeah.
How many devices do we have? I have this. I have my Fitbit. There's other things we have. How many software tools are we using? And so there's also this issue of being disconnected because I think that now there's a disconnection, not crisis, but an issue
Yeah.
where people don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to converse. Like during the pandemic, I remember when we were all stuck at home, a lot of people were struggling in terms of how to communicate online with each other because they didn't know how to do it.
Mhm.
So, so I think there is going to be a communication challenge for folks. That connection, like we have trouble communicating, we have trouble connecting, and so some people are lonely, some people don't have any friends or someone they can talk to about deeper issues, and that's becoming a big issue. So I think yes, the when it comes to all those things, social media, technology, and AI, the connection and the community piece of real life persons um, is so important, but also, and even though we have this benefit, there's also a big drawback. And I think
Mhm.
that's gonna be a huge problem, like, and I see it all the time, like, for example, with, let's not to throw not I'm not that I'm throwing my teens under the bus, it's more like, giving you an example, but, like but, a simple thing like, teacher asked my kid to do something, I said, "Just reply back and say that, here's it." "Okay, what exactly do I say?" I'm like, "Well, what do you think you should say?" Like, I don't wanna feed it to him. And then he might go to
Right.
AI. It's like, look, like it's literally a line or two. So I don't want to have to, as a parent, you don't want to feed your kids every single thing. You want to have them think about it and learn it and things like that. So, yeah. So I think the connection piece the uh, is that the biggest issue? Maybe it may be it because uh, there's there's connection with the self, there's connection with others, there's connection with
Mhm.
communities and families because a lot of families because of technology feeling disconnected. I definitely feel disconnected from my kids at dinner time when they bring their phones. I'm like, hey guys,
Yeah.
stop bringing your
Mhm.
phones to the dinner table. Like, I don't mind you using your phones, but
Right.
when we're having dinner, just, put it in your pocket. Like, my phone's in my pocket. I don't bring it out unless
Mm.
I have to or you need something, but normally I don't. I'm sitting here having dinner, we're talking. And so I think that to me is, You made a really good point. I think that's one of the biggest barriers that people have.
You know, Bobby, you make such great points. I mean, that example was fantastic, I have to put into Chat GPT or Claude, for instance, to find out what I need to say to that person. And I hope that everyone it is listening to that. And we would love to hear your perspectives on it because is that happening? Is that your experience? Because I'll tell you what that share reminded me of, Bobby, was um, in my younger professional life, I was a huge advocate for play, okay?
Mm,
Trying to get parents to see why it was important to play, and that play wasn't just kidding around, that kids were actually learning life skills through play, right? This is what it reminds me of when we're sitting here today talking about social media and AI. It reminds me of the same conversation that I was trying to have with parents years ago. We think that giving the device to the kiddos, right? We think that giving the device to the kiddos, it keeps them quiet for a minute, right? And that's fine. But what we don't understand is the long-term challenges because I'm seeing those as I work with clients. Right? It's not only the over functioning, right, for my clients and present day who happen to be mothers, right, in a lot of cases.
mhm,
It is their family structure. Right? So
right.
this is we're right at the sweet spot where we need to start having these discussions so we can empower one another in a community and know that we can shift this. We can shift this. It is very easy. It is very easy. I don't know what's coming up for you on this, but it's really, I think, the foundation. The connection is the foundation. I don't want to be here 20 years from now trying to teach our kids how to have a conversation. These are things that we can readily do. They're accessible. We can start at the kitchen table, you know?
I recently saw the, trailer to Toy Story 5,
Mm,
and the idea of that story is that, the Toy Story has always been about play and about imagination and kids with
mhm,
their toys. And so they have all these toys that you play with and you imagine all of the cool scenarios. And all of a sudden they pop this little mini laptop thing in her hand, the little girl. And and it shows all the little kids now just on these mini laptops and not talking to each other. And it's like, man, like that's gonna cut at the heartstrings of everybody because we all get it. I mean, when I was young, people would complain that I watched too much TV or I played too many video games.
mhm,
But I think the challenge of technology is that it is a 24/7 constant barrage. Like even my daughter with her flip phone, right? It's still 24/7. When people message her, she feels the need to respond right away. She always has
mhm,
it. And so, it's still that's a big problem, and we also don't know the impact. One of the things I often share, this is kind of my, analogy, which is, a lot of people agree that climate change and climate sustainability is an important issue.
mhm,
But one of the reasons why it's never number 1 for people is because it's hard to see unless you look at data long term. You
mhm,
have to look at what happened 20 years ago and what happens now and what the prediction are of the future, and it's a long-term play, so it's harder to be in the moment, say, "Oh my gosh, I must compost, I must recycle because, long-term 20 years
mhm,
from now, it's gonna happen." So
mhm,
it's hard to see that. Similarly, when you look at diet, cutting sugar or cutting carbs or trying to be more healthy, like I struggle with my weight. The long-term play is hard because in the moment, I really feel like having something and, and that but then you don't see it till later on, the impact it has on your body. And so I liken that specifically to the impact of technology, social media, AI on kids. Because in the moment, look, the average age that people get a smartphone is under 10 years of age.
right,
The time when they get, access to all these things is way sooner than we ever thought we would ever give to our kids when we were younger, and way sooner than, people ever thought this was ever gonna happen, and more and way sooner than they're ready. And so, the long-term effect of this, we're gonna find out when they're older, or we're finding it now that maybe people are having trouble communicating, or they can't sleep, they have trouble attention span, they have trouble with
Yeah.
anxiety and cyberbullying and all these different things. And so, the long-term play of this impact, we're going to find out later on. We're gonna find out that, in 10, 20 years, the people that our kids grow up with this stuff, because they didn't have controls, and look, whether it's parental controls or regulatory controls, like with lawmakers, or whether it's corporates control, which I don't think they have any interest in doing so. But the point is, parents can't do it because they're overwhelmed, and lawmakers can't do it because they're too chicken, and corporations don't do it because they only care about money. So until we force this, they're going to grow up, and we're going to have these people that have a really hard time communicating. They have a hard time critical thinking. They have a hard time thinking for themselves, being creative. Not everybody, but a large chunk of people. So so my point is that the climate thing is really hard to see. So is the diet sugar thing, like as a diabetic. And I think the impact of kids and technology and social media, we can't see it in the moment. And so it's a long-term
Right.
thing. And by the time you realize something's gone wrong, or it's a really bad situation, um, at that point you already have diabetes, or at that point we've lost, 30% of the ozone, or you know what I mean? Like, so I make that point because I think it's an emergency now they need to deal with,
It
but
is.
people don't want to do it because they everyone's doing it. Everyone has their kids on social media and technology. And, like my kids with the smartphone thing, so like, everybody in their school is on it. Not just like they're the only one without the smartphone. I'm like, I know, but that's all I can do.
Well, you know what? I think that again, I go back to you make such amazing and valid points, but I think that as parents and we're smart, we're very, very smart. We can put guardrails on this. We can put guardrails. It's not about saying no, you can't have access to it. Right? But it's just like the many other things that we had to advocate in our child's behalf, right? It starts with us modeling it, right? Which sounds like in your home, you do that, right? So you model it and then you put guardrails around it, and I think that's what we can start doing. So, coming away, if anything, from this conversation, feeling empowered, knowing that we, could just do one small thing. Sit down, at dinner time and say, "You know what? At dinner from now on, there's no devices." Right? So we're going to put them over here because I'm so interested in finding out what is happening in your life right now, and this is the time that we are gonna do it. Now, I know families, from my work, they don't always get to sit down every single day. Maybe it's in the car you're doing it, in a drop off or a pickup situation, or you're eating on the go, you're in a restaurant. However you're doing it, however you decide it works best for your family, just putting those devices away. That could be your 1%. That could be your guardrails. Because I'm telling you, what you were saying really resonates with me in regards to my advocating for play. I'll tell you, I never thought when my second born, when after I had my second born, that I would be going to play to a class that would teach him how to play outdoors. Right? I never thought that we would be doing that, but we did it, and it was the one of the best decisions that we ever made, because he loves it. Where is he now? It's summertime. He's 15. He's outside with his friends, but is he on social media? Does he use it? Yes, he does. He does, but there's guardrails around it.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, because it is so overwhelming, I think the best solution, particularly for parents and teens, is just pick one thing to start. I
Mhm.
mean, look, and the first thing you do is start talking about it being a challenge or a concern. Talking to my kids about our concerns or challenges, things like that. I mean, all I can do is, I sometimes will point out the behavior, point out what I see, and then I say, "What do you think of that?" And they look at me blankly, like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, "Well, I mean, I think it's an issue." Like, when you spend, when you spend 4 hours on whether it's your laptop or social media and you don't stop for a break or don't get you skip dinner, like, what is that telling you? Like, it's a lot, right? And, we have to
Mhm.
have those conversations. But then I think when it comes to coming up with something, yeah, pick one thing that you want to work on. What's the one thing? Because you can't do all 10, 20, 30 things.
No.
What's that
Mm-mm.
one thing? I think that goes, but it's hard to do the one thing until you actually acknowledge that there's a problem, and worse, getting the kids, because I have teenagers, I have a 15-year-old and 17-year-old, getting them to admit that there's a problem or that they have an issue with it. Because most of the time when you ask them, they think they're fine. And I see as an adult, I'm not fine. I have trouble falling
Right?
asleep. I'm on my phone all the time. I have technology and social media and AI issues as well. And even AI, like going back to that one, I'm trying really hard when I'm using AI, and I'm using it I'm using it more often now. But I want to use it for things where um, I wouldn't do it on my own. It's something that it helps me amplify and as a great tool and a vehicle for what I'm trying to use or amplify what I'm doing, as opposed to having to think for myself. I like using it for research, but one thing that happens is sometimes AI will do like a plan for me. I say, "I want let me review this plan." Oh, and then I find a few things that don't make sense, and and I finagle that. But um, yeah, going back to the kids, I think picking one thing is the way to go, and figuring what that one thing is. I like the dinner thing. The one that I would like to do, which I haven't done, and I've honestly tried, but the teenagers are very, very.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they're tough. Like, look, I'm a parent, and I struggle sometimes because like when the kids were younger, when the kids were like 12 and 10, or 11 and 9, I was the greatest dad of all time. And then somewhere a couple years later, all of a sudden, I felt like the worst dad in the world because I couldn't seem to do anything right by them or by myself. And so, part of it, with the overwhelm of parenting, is you pick your battles. So, as much as I wanted to insist that we all put our phones in a basket in the living room and then go to bed, and we can just read in bed. Hell, you can even listen to music on your Alexa in your room, whatever. But I couldn't pull it off. I couldn't. Um, to be honest, I was too scared of my daughter. Too like she was a rebellious 13, 14-year-old, and I didn't want to create even more disconnect between us, and she'd said some pretty harsh things to me, and I was like, "You know what? I It's a battle I chose to not go for." And
Right.
so that's hard, and I feel bad about it. I feel bad about it. I don't know what impact it's gonna have on her. I mean, luckily, at least she still only has this flip phone, but still, I just couldn't, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So,
I don't think
it's
you're
okay. We can't do
yes.
everything.
Absolutely, and I don't think there I absolutely 100% agree with you when you say that we can't do everything and we have to pick our battles. I don't think it's about taking it away. A simple thing I remember doing with, my younger one was saying, "Boy, since I put those, since I blocked my time off and moved myself away from some of the tasks that was doing, boy, I feel so much more clear-headed." And so I found that weeks later, he came back and he was like, Mom," he's like, "I put a couple changes into my schedule and it worked." And I was like, "Wow, really?" I'm like, "What did you do? Maybe I could learn something from you." I know it's a different kind of parenting because, there's, different styles of parenting for sure, but that seemed to work in the moment for him. But you gotta do what works for you. I think it's more having the conversation, and to our point here, Bobby, about that is imagination and creativity are really important, and one of the silent robbers having too much time on the social media is a silent robber. Now, when we think of some of our inventors like Thomas Edison, Ben Franklin, the list goes on and on. Steve Jobs, our kids can relate to that, right? You know, it wasn't that, they had imagination in order to make that happen. They did not come from a generation where they asked their parents, right? Like, What should I say or what should I do?" Right? Or chat, "What should I do?" Claude, "What should I do?" They came from a generation that was outside playing in the dirt, splashing in puddles, right? And that opened their mind up and created spaces. So I think that if anything, we have aspirations as parents for our children, no matter what they wanna do. And and it's important that they have imagination, but I think that's probably a conversation for another day because I think we could talk for a long time on that.
Yeah, I think there's lots here we could talk about for a long time. So, I mean, if people are listening into this thing, by all means, share your questions, share your thoughts about what you think the biggest challenges are for parents, for kids, and social media, technology, AI. I mean, there's lots there. Um, let me because yeah, I think in general, social media and technology and AI are all three like topics we can drill deeper into on a different week, which is totally fine. Um, Now, let's switch to like more like adults and parents. I mean, so what do you see are some of the biggest issues they're struggling with when it comes to, I guess, the advent onslaught of so much technology and media?
Well, certainly, their families and, navigating, the relationships
Hmm.
with their, kids and with their spouses, equally so. There's many challenges. Sleep, but I think some of the things we're talking about with the kids, just in the women that I'm working with, this over functioning, you know, this is what we're planting seeds for our kiddos later in life. But I see that Florence has something, and so I'm wondering if we should kinda tune into that too.
Yeah, so she's saying that when my kids were small, we had them buy device time. They had a chore list and were paid with tokens. They could buy device time or cash out or both. We also had a rule where the device went in a specific device drawer. We were on the table and had to share a story about our day, mom and dad included. They were engaged, and when they were older, it wasn't a fight for us to engage them. Guardrails are important. And I agree with the guardrails. And one of the things I'll say is that, look, the truth is, the longer you wait to do these things, the more harder it is to do it. So we waited too long to set those rules in around the flip phone and what's in the bedrooms, and so trying to do it when they're 15 and 17, it was very, very difficult. Now that said, when they were really little, I set guardrails actually around sugar in the house. I explained, I'm diabetic. I explained what sugar is really bad, so that's why there's no cookies or juice or pop in the house. They get it from their friends, but not that's not gonna be here. Why? Because I taught them how to read labels when they were, like, 6 and 8 years old, and so they got it. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't drink pop or drink juice or have sugar, but the point is I educated them back in the day. Whereas the device stuff, we just said, "Look, um, we had we had we had talked about various things, and we set some guardrails, but not enough." I definitely have guardrails on their laptop usage, especially during the pandemic, it kinda went out of control, right? And so I use this
Like,
great app called Custodio, which tracks the amount of time and where they spend their time online. So, and they're aware that they're being tracked. Like, look, I bought you a laptop. It's going to track what you're doing, and it's going to shut off at certain times of the day and certain times of the night, and after a certain number of hours. And they're aware of that. So now what they do is they ask me for more time, which is fine. You can ask for more time for what? What's it for? What are you doing? You got a project? Okay, great. Do the project. I also what I do is I have a this laptop I'm on right now. This is the central home laptop, which is in the living room area. This one's
mm,
available for everybody 24/7. So
mm,
if they really need something, your laptop will go off in your bedroom, but you can come out here and work on this thing if you want. So that's something we could do. But a part of it is also again setting those rules early and making sure it's a clear rule because if it's established when they're young, then it never comes
yeah,
up again. They get it, right? Like, my kids now know that they're not gonna get a smartphone until grade 12, they just know this, and so it's never become an issue. Now grabbing the phone from their bedrooms and all that kinda stuff, yeah, like,
yeah,
I can't get it. It would cause so much friction and problems
yeah.
that it's not worth it. I'm not picking that battle, but, I'm happy with where the kids are for the most part.
Absolutely. It looks like Lachelle says we have our kids turn in the devices before bed by 10 p.m. on school days. I love it. I love it because see, then they know, like, and I think the kids need, they need that. But, to your point, Bobby, I think there's probably going to be a lot of people that are listening, but a lot of people that will be listening to this on a replay. And they're going to say, like, oh boy, here we go. Like, just another thing that didn't get ahead of, and I think it's about that. I think it's about really kind of coming to these conversations with an open mind, knowing there are things that we can do, and I love what you were saying, about the sugar and, we can do the same things, even if it's just something really tiny, you know?
Well, look, when I read what Florence and Lachelle said, I'm sure people will look at that and say, "Well, easy for you to say."
Right.
Because it is. Like, when I say, "I've got rid of all the sugar and cookies and pop and juice from my household," they'll say to me, "Easy for you to say, you don't know our kids." And that's true. I mean, I give everyone some grace. It's very, very difficult, and that's why, again, if you did it really early, it's way, way easier. I can't imagine the thought of having all my kids until 18 drop their kids, by 10 p.m. Because we've established a culture in our house that doesn't do that, and trying to do it now would be just way too difficult. It would cause too much problems. But doing it when they're earlier, yeah, that's great. I think that's really important. Whether it's devices, whether it's AI, whether it's sugar, food, have these conversations as soon as you can. Now that said, how does that translate to adults? What can we do better when it comes to the advent of technology? Like I've been heavily using Claude in the last like month or so, and it's been actually transformative. I love it, but at the same time, I'm worried that it's going to get out of control. So how do I navigate that? Same with technology. Like on my phone, one of the things I've done is I don't have anybody. All my notifications are off. Now, some people, they're on notifications on all the time. The only notification I have on are WhatsApp and text. So if someone texts me or WhatsApp for work or for my family, I'll get that. But for the most part, it's off because I want to go into each social media app with intention. That's what I've learned from social media. But I also know that, technology and these billionaire corporations and these tech bro companies, they care about money. They don't, and they're creating algorithms and they're creating addictive kind of things they're doing with Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and smartphones, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, whatever. And it's a huge problem. And I think that, we as parents, we can set as many rules we want at home. We also have to advocate for regulations with lawmakers because, right now, like you're in the US, I'm in Canada, and there's currently no laws on here on those things. These
Mhm.
companies get away with whatever they want. They passed a social media ban for 16 kids, in Australia and a couple other countries, and the
Yeah.
trend is starting to pass, but, most lawmakers are very, very scared of doing that. I'm all for it, to be honest. I don't see the benefit of I understand the desire to be connected and whatnot, but kids actually don't need it, especially if they have laptops. Like, if they have laptops, they can still be
Yeah.
connected in certain ways, and so they don't need that.
Yes. I think you make such a valid point because, again, along with our kiddos developing imagination, right? And they need boredom. Our kids do not always, or not all kids, because we're not going to generalize, but they don't know what boredom is. And the dopamine that you get from the notifications or the dopamine hits that you get from going on there and reading a message, I mean, it is measured. There are measurements in that. And so we just wanna be mindful of that, but I think for our most powerful teacher is us. So like I said, sharing something of your experience, so how we can do, whether we're in the car, we're going out to dinner, we're having dinner at home, but, sharing your experience. Like, that's why I do that with my kids. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this has been so great." Like, if we do a family outing, I'm like, "This is so great that we are out together in the fresh air and the nature." Like, it is just so amazing. What's your experience on it? Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I've noticed a change in them. The more we do that again and reinstitute that, I notice a change. And I think those are the most powerful moments. The powerful moments for me and parents isn't saying, you know what, you can't do this anymore. What it is providing them an experience like going out for a hike and then saying what your experience is and asking them for feedback. And then having them tune in intrinsically to their body. But I see that Lachelle's mentioned too. She said, "We started this 2 years ago, and one child was a senior with the phone." Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Sleep
and
patterns.
going back to the and again, I'm not saying it cannot be done with older teens. It can be done. It just takes more work. And the patients, the boredom thing is interesting because the one of the stories I have is a long, long time ago when the kids were little. I think they were like maybe 7 and 5, something like that. And I was like, you know what? I we need to stop all technology on weekends. I was like, it's just silly, and I told my wife we should do that. She agreed. So we decided to not do. Now what happens is that, and the reason why parents give up so quickly is because the first weekend I told the kids it was happening, they were screaming and yelling,
Mm.
jumping on our bed. They were really upset, blah, blah, blah. And that happened, and it was hard. It was hard to get through it. But I said, no, no, guys, look, there's books, there's board games, like there's
Yeah,
things you can do. Um,
right.
and or to your point, getting bored. And the next weekend, same thing. It was horrible. It was hard. And this kept going. Now, parents would have given up. Uh, four, it was 5 weekends in a row, just absolutely god awful. And then,
Believable.
and most parents would have given up. On the sixth weekend, it was quiet. My wife and I are in bed, and we're like, "What's going on here? They haven't come in here to bother us or annoy us, or what's going on?" And so I got up and walked around, and I saw my daughter was coloring on her bed,
Mhm.
and then my son was
I
playing
love
with
it.
these blocks in the office, and I was like, "Okay, it only took 5.5 weeks to get to this point." I almost gave up. I was ready to give up, I tell you that. So that was 5.5 weeks with a 7 and a 5-year-old. So with
Mhm,
teenagers, they might, uh actually, my daughter, I'll share another story, which was, my wife had given her a phone by mistake, like a phone that actually had smartphone capabilities, and I got really upset. I was like, "Hey, we did not give our older son a smartphone, and you're giving her this thing that you thought was just a flip phone, but it's not. We have to
mhm,
take." And my wife's like, "She's had it for 3 weeks." I'm like, "I know, but, like, how fair is it to our older son that this is happening?" And I also said, "How fair is it to me, because I've been such an advocate for not having this, and now you did this, and you've put me as the bad guy in this situation to take it away." So I said, "You need to take it back from her and replace it with a flip phone." And and again, after that and I had to, and at first, it took me 2 weeks to have that conversation with my wife because I was so nervous about the conversation, because it happened a
yeah,
week earlier. And then when she finally said, "Yeah, you're right," it took another 2 weeks for us to actually have the confrontation. And then when it happened, she was pissed. Like, she was
mhm,
pissed. And she said, "I'm never using this thing, and I hate this." And she was cold to us, like, God, the icy coldness we had for days and days and days. It was really, really bad. And I absolutely, uh and at that point, she was 13. She wasn't old enough to run away, because
yeah,
when she was 15, things or 14, things happened where she was willing to just take off, but she wasn't willing to do that. But, yeah, it was horrible. And then but eventually, about 3 weeks of her icy anger, she started getting tired of being angry at us, and we started getting back to normal. But, man, that was really, really hard. So
I believe it. I wanted to I noticed Lachelle mentioned something about withdrawal symptoms. It's real.
Yeah.
This is what's happening to the kids. It's like they're addicted or adults, right? You take it away in some instances, depending on how their brain is wired up, and it is an addiction. So what happens when you're detoxing, and I only know this because I've had family members who've had challenges with this, is you end up shaking, and the experiences are similar. With kids, we may hear just the yelling, the screaming, the tantruming, but you know what? I did wanna also mention that there is a terrific episode, and I think that everyone would benefit from watching it. It is a Dr. Phil episode. It's kind of how I do my research, watching these different podcasts and things, and the girl, her mother thought that the best way for child rearing was to give her everything she wanted. So when they got to the show, she was, I believe, 17, 16, 17. She wanted a G-Wagon. And to us watching this, it's comical, okay? Because this girl, he's asking, like, "What do you need a G-Wagon for?" "Oh, I love it. It's so nice. It's so spacious." This, that, and the other thing. And at the end, I kid you not, she was crying because he had told the mother that she needed a job. She needed a job and she needed to do volunteer work, and she was a mess. She was tantruming like she would have when she was 2.
Mhm.
So, it's just we make a decision, and we, just decide together, like you said, decide together what is best for our families. But knowing the information, I think is just the starting point, because we may not necessarily really think about these things long term. Like that, I'm going to have an adult that overfunctions, or I'm going to have a people pleaser, or I'm going to have someone that has developed these habits over the course of time. And it's just going to be a challenge that they're going to have to navigate. Or they have a dream that they want to accomplish something. Well, being able to relate to someone is really important, right? Being able to have a valuable conversation where you're able to communicate well is a really important skill. So I think that for me is really kind of a starting point of where we can or what we can do to navigate and put guardrails around.
Yeah, no, no, I appreciate that. And again, we're doing this live stream because I plan to now do a weekly live stream on Substack. Now, this one today is on Friday at I guess I started at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, but my goal is to have them on the weekend. Usually around Saturdays around like lunchtime, 11:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., that type of thing. But I haven't, this weekend I'm super busy and I wasn't able to do it. But normally that's gonna be my plan. But I'm thankful that Kimberly came in and helped me with this. And for those who want to have conversations, whether you want to talk about entrepreneurship, careers, business ownership, branding, storytelling, technology, AI, these are all things that I'm definitely happy to talk about. That's what I'm also open to having guests. So if anybody's listening to this and wants to be a guest on my live stream, just ping me and we'll set it up. And Kimberly, you can tell me how easy was it to set this thing up?
Oh my gosh, it was so easy. I love it. I love this.
Yeah,
So thank you so much again for the invitation. And, I'm happy to do it. And if you want to have another conversation about another topic or continue this one, I'd love to do that as well.
I appreciate that. And for those who don't know, this is you see in the top left corner of my screen there. It's called TLB Club. So TLB Club is it's a membership community that I run where you get access to me and there are other in-house experts and other people who are going through similar things on the business entrepreneurship journey. And I teach people about personal branding, sales, social selling, focus, accountability, how to use AI, how to use technology in a safe way, in a way that helps you grow, whether you're trying to grow your brand as a corporate person or whether you're trying to grow your brand as a business person. but my goal is to help you do all that stuff: more speaking, more storytelling, more authority, more trust. That's what it is. So we get weekly calls. You're welcome to come on one of my calls as a guest. I do a Monday coaching call at 3 p.m. I do Tuesday clubhouse room at 4 p.m. on LinkedIn Mastery. I do a monthly tech clinic, a monthly LinkedIn clinic, and now I'm starting a weekly AI co-working session with my members. So, and anyone's able to come as a guest for at least a couple of times. And then at a certain point, I'll say, look, if you're liking this, if you're liking my expertise, the expertise of other people in the group, maybe you should become a member and be part of it too, and be a contributor yourself. So that's kind of what I suggest. So thank you, Kimberly, for being here. Thanks everyone for listening to this. And if you have any other questions, please, if you like this conversation, we encourage you to take this live stream and share it on your network, put it on Substack notes, put it on other channels as well. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. Remember, here's something I'll say. Technology is here to stay, so we have to learn how to integrate with it and navigate it as best we can, inform ourselves. When social media came, I said the same thing. Social media is here to stay. We have to learn how to navigate it and manage it and inform ourselves so we can make better decisions for ourselves and for our kids. And so with AI, it's the exact same message. AI is here to stay. We have to inform ourselves and educate ourselves on what it is and how it all works, and not have them, because if you don't understand it, it's someone else gave the analogy that if you don't understand what social media or technology or AI is doing with your kids, it's like putting your kids in a cab, and the cab is driving and you don't know who the driver is, you don't know where they're going, you don't know how fast they are, you don't know if they put on a seatbelt. They're just going. And that's not how we want to be as parents and what we want for our kids. So I say, guys, educate yourself, inform yourself about AI. And if you have questions about it, come talk to me. I know a lot about it. I'm happy to share what I know, and I'm happy to educate people. So, Kimberly, any last words in terms of where people can find you and follow you and things like that?
Absolutely. You can follow me here on Substack. I'm a newbie, not as well established as Bobby here on this platform. You can also connect with me on the LinkedIn platform. But I look forward to having a conversation with you and getting to know you, whether it be about our topic today or something else.
Awesome. And I encourage you all to also follow me on Substack. To follow, if you're new here, follow me on LinkedIn and on my other channels. You also come by any of my calls. I'm happy to serve and talk to you guys. That's what it's all about. So thanks, Kimberly. Thanks, Lachelle and Florence and everybody else who was part of the conversation. We'll be doing this again next week. Not sure what day. I'm guessing Saturday, but we'll see. And hopefully this will be start something new and exciting that everyone can take part in. Thanks, Kimberly. Thanks, everybody. So long, and we'll see you soon.